Before the "I do," he heard, "I slept with 2 guys last night." What he did next silenced the church. The cream ribbon draped over the church pew had a loose end, trembling in the air like a held breath. Michael tightened the knot of his tie in the side hall mirror, where the orchestra's rehearsal of Ave Maria bounced in low frequencies, as if the old building were reminding everyone that stone has a memory. That's when he heard it. First the rustle of fabric, a purse brushing wood, then her voice, clear, hurried, raw. "I slept with 2 last night." It wasn't a whisper. It was said like someone needing to drop a weight before the veil came down. The lapel mic the coordinator was clipping to the lining of the dress, testing the signal backstage, did the rest. The sound came through clean, in stereo, straight into Michael's ear, through the earpiece where, just to save time, he'd asked the videographers to plug in the return feed. "I need to know, Jessica." "To who?" came Emily's voice, maid of honor and childhood friend, right after, shaking. Michael's heart didn't speed up. It slowed. The world, in one blow, went sluggish. The corridor smelled of cut flowers. His fingers searched for the polished wood of the side door for balance. The groom he had been 5 seconds earlier stayed on the other side of the hinge. There, between the hallway and the chancel, a question reared like a horse yanking its bit at full gallop. When the truth hurts, should it be pulled into the open before everyone, or protected in silence to spare the one you love? Michael breathed, and the question bit again. Public justice or private mercy? The priest said something to the sacristan about starting the procession in 15 minutes. The ceiling lights, warm bulbs bought in a rush the day before, dripped a gentle heat. He clenched his left fist, feeling the ring he'd worn since the suit fitting. He remembered the ritual he meant to fulfill minutes later: take the mic, thank his mom and dad and friends, promise to love, to protect, to build. The ritual now flickered like that cream ribbon. On the other side of a wooden partition, Emily pressed on with the bravery of someone who knows dignity begins with the right question. "Jessica, look at me. This has to be clear." It was weak, it was messy, Jessica swallowed the rest. Enough to splinter 2 years of promises, goals stuck on the fridge, split bills, futures sketched on napkins. Michael pulled the earpiece out and still heard it again, this time carried by the corridor's echo like syllables tumbling downstairs. No camera filmed his reaction there, but there was an old, slightly stained mirror capable of catching the first crack in the groom's image. A tightened jaw muscle. His chin canted a little left, that look of someone refusing to be made a fool of in front of his own reflection. Doubt ran his body like a sudden fever. He could simply leave, slip out a side door, text later, dodge the spectacle, or he could go through with it, say, "I do," hoping it meant nothing and time would fix it. The third option, the scariest, was to carry the truth to the center of the nave, offer it like broken bread before everyone, and ask that no one pretend not to see. A symbol tugged him toward that last direction, the beige envelope in his inner jacket pocket. 2 tickets to Itacaré he'd bought at dawn in both their names, clipped behind it, the hotel receipt on his card. He himself had written, "Our well-earned vacation," in the corner. Now the paper burned like an ember. An ember, he thought, either lights or scorches. That choice is mine. At the main door, his father, Harold, wore an out-of-style felt hat, proud like a farmer finally seeing a good harvest. The man's face was weather-cut by sun, lined with a patience you don't learn in books. Michael remembered being a boy who broke the neighbor's window, and his dad walking him over with a "we'll go together, apologize and pay," teaching the secret ritual of owned truth. That ritual, face it, own it, repair it, returned now on a stage 1,000 times larger, with white dress and an arch of roses. "Son, need some water?" Harold's voice came low. Michael breathed again to keep from crying. Tears there would be a dangerous relief. "I'm okay, Dad." Was he? His hand shook, but his feet strangely stood firm. He pocketed the earpiece, checked his phone on impulse, and the lit screen handed him another piece, an unread ping from the bachelor party group at 2 a.m. Sent a 10-second video. Jessica laughing at a bar, tall glasses, a little dance, Emily in the background wagging a "cut it out" to the camera. The video had no caption, not proof by itself, but now a shard that fit into a mosaic he didn't want to assemble. The coordinator, clueless about the quake, appeared with the checklist. Ribbon on wrist? Rings with the ring bearer? Speech ready? When the priest calls, you walk to the middle, greet the parents, turn to the door, and wait for the bride. The mic will be live for your thanks. Live mic. The phrase itself lit another corridor inside him. Not blind vengeance, the first word anger whispered, but something that sounded more like fine adjustment, a settling with reality. The moral question returned. Reveal to protect his dignity and that of the guests, or keep quiet to protect Jessica's image and give her a chance to speak at the right time? Emily, not knowing he'd heard, stayed on the other side, a friend and anchor tangled together. Jessica, whatever is true, make it whole, halves hurt worse. The musicians warmed up the march. The cream ribbon kept trembling as if asking, "Who are you when no one is watching and when everyone is?" Michael closed his eyes a second. The smell of cut flowers hurt beautifully. He thought of a promise he'd made to himself years earlier, watching his mother swallow humiliations in the name of appearances. Never again sweep shards under an expensive rug. He opened his eyes, knowing he wouldn't slip out any side door. He would go in. And when it was time to speak, he would choose words that wouldn't turn the altar into a scaffold, but wouldn't make truth a polite ghost either. "Let it be whole," he repeated, not yet knowing how to say it, only sure someone there needed to dignify the real. The march began. Guests stood. Between sighs and raised phones, one life peeled from another, the one he'd dreamed and the one he'd have to live. He walked. More than walking, he went. Every step felt like signing a contract not yet written, but asking for the same ink he'd used since boyhood: courage. Before Jessica, Michael's routine was a spreadsheet of bills and small, vague dreams. He worked at a neighborhood print shop where days smelled of ink and the paper cutter clacked. He made wedding invitations, an irony that now nipped at his fingertips. Fridays ended with the last scroll through the sheet: rent, water, power, the bike payment, a small pix to Mum, the tiny reserve he'd labeled in an email to himself, future fund. No room for luxuries, only the quiet stubbornness of someone descended from people who plant and wait for rain. Jessica came to the counter, asking for a business card quote. She left with a coffee invitation. He'd always thought pickup lines were ridiculous, so he did what he did best. Sketched on the back of the quote a little layout with her name in an elegant typeface and said, "Names, when respected, gain a body." She laughed in that way that makes you think the world has elastic. They collected tiles of future like bottle caps. She worked the front desk at a clinic, dreamed of doing aesthetics, making more money, leaving the stuffy apartment she shared with 2 roommates. He promised trips, a dog, a porch with a hammock. In their few fights, always about money and schedules, Jessica swallowed pride first. Michael, his arguments. They had a tacit deal. "We'll get there." And there had been drawn many times. On a crumpled napkin, in a rainy talk, during a soccer goal she celebrated sitting on the floor in animal pajamas. There, now shattered in slow motion to organ music. It wasn't just the sentence in the bridal room that floored him. It was the cluster of small things hanging for weeks on an invisible hook. Her showing up late the Tuesday he made moqueca, and she arrived already fed, smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. Her refusal to turn on the camera during video calls when they slept in different places to save bus fare. The surprise dinner she cancelled because the clinic exploded with clients, followed by stories at a corner bar with her co-workers and 2 guys appearing like shadows. The Instagram password changed because of the algorithm, when before they'd said having each other's passwords was a silly way to keep insecurity from finding cracks. He pretended not to see, not wanting to be the man who investigates. But life and its cream ribbons doesn't ask permission to reveal. Outside the church, Rose tucked her hair behind her ear, confused by the bustle. The borrowed dress was tight at the bust and long at the heel, but she felt beautiful. She had 27 cell phone selfies taken in her bathroom since leaving home. Rose dreamed her son's wedding like a harvest, not fireworks. The ritual of seeing the boy she'd carried, perpetually runny nose, perpetually scraped knees, enter a room smelling of candles and leave with a whole family attached, a chain of people who hold each other's hands when weather turns rough. Beside her, Harold adjusted his hat and talked engines with the bridal car driver, because men on the verge of tears when they refuse to cry talk about motors. Yvette, Jessica's mother, navigated the ceremony like a commander, certain she rules seas, hand on the coordinator's radio, eyes auditing arrangements, hair in a bun that said, "I know what I'm doing." Her relationship with truth leaned more to function than fidelity. What serves the image comes first. We'll tidy the rest later. Emily, the maid of honor, the same anchor on the other side of the partition, was the opposite. She'd shielded Jessica through adolescence from bad boys and clumsy empathies, but kept an ethical rigidity that cuts before it heals. She was a co-protagonist that day without wanting the role. She hated the stage. On Instagram, she looked sweet, Longer conversations revealed her sweetness had a calcium base. When Michael learned he could use the mic up front, a new gratitude moment tradition the coordinator pitched, he'd written on a slip of paper, "Mum, thank you for teaching me that dishes washed at night make for lighter mornings. Dad, for showing me that an apology given while standing beats one on your knees after running. Jessica, for choosing me among so many. Friends, for holding my worst silences." The note was folded in his pocket. When his fingers brushed for it, they met the Itakare tickets. The friction between the two surfaces felt like a physical metaphor, gratitude and a prepaid future pressing, asking for hierarchy. At work the week before, the paper cutter caught and sliced a rich couple's giant yes crooked. The client called screaming, as if a blade error were a personal attack. Michael reprinted everything, stayed late, didn't charge for the redo. He rode the bus home around 10:30 p.m., eating a cold pastry. Jessica sent a voice note laughing that she was exhausted. The clinic boomed. The next morning, for the first time, he felt a tiny thing, envy for the idea of a life more fun than his. He wasn't proud of it. He thought maybe marriage was a pact to keep envy from settling. And now, at the altar door, he realized it isn't envy that corrodes. It's the unsaid. The unsaid opens false doors. "Ready?" whispered the coordinator. It was time. The wedding party formed a corridor of standard smiles and eyes, searching for where to put their phones. Emily hadn't left Jessica's side. The bride, glimpsed through a crack, had puffy eyes and a lipstick that suddenly looked too red for mourning. Michael rubbed his neck. 2 stories lay open before him, one written with love and mending, "We'll fix it later, away from people," and one written with love and light, "We'll face a first slice now so we don't invite lies to move in." The difference, he realized, wasn't the courage to shout, but the courage to name. He took 3 steps. The priest smiled, offered a quick handshake, the kind of man who'd officiated many weddings and could smell storms. Michael took the mic planned for the groom's thank you. The ritual, "Give thanks before you vow," had always seemed beautiful, put origin ahead of destination. Maybe he could honor the ritual and still not violate anyone. The sound went live. A tech threw a thumbs up. Rose adjusted her purse with a little plastic squeak. Harold removed his hat out of respect. The cream ribbon still trembled. "Good morning." His voice came out steady, without theater. The echo returned the word with a reverence churches are built for. "Before we begin, I prepared some thanks. They still stand. The first paragraph was easy because it was old truth. Mum, thank you for teaching me that a day's dignity starts the night before. Dad, for showing me that an apology made on your feet beats one on your knees after running. Friends, you've seen me at my worst and still came." Quiet laughs broke the baseline tension. Rose cried in the sweet, embarrassed way of someone who hates crying in front of dressed-up people. Harold nodded with his eyes, the only place farm men accept poetry. Michael inhaled and brought his hands forward, the thank you note held under his thumb. With the other, he took out the beige envelope. The gesture wasn't planned. The paper and the envelope touched. "I brought something that represents days we dreamed," he said, raising it slightly, not shaking it like a trophy. 2 plane tickets, a simple hotel, a hammock I've pictured hanging between 2 palm trees. A few people smiled, assuming a destination reveal. "These were bought in joy, and I intend to honor every cent of work that paid for them. But first I have to honor something else. Truth, which sometimes arrives earlier than expected." 3 heads turned, the human instinct to smell fire. Yvette, alert, squeezed her invisible clipboard. Emily, beyond the partition, held her breath like someone bracing the sea with her shoulders. The priest leaned forward millimeters, evaluating. "I don't want to turn this house into a courtroom," Michael continued, and the way he said house instead of church pulled the conversation close. "But I've also learned a house can't handle a hidden leak. It rots slow." An elderly man in the 3rd row nodded like someone who knows roofs. "I heard something today by accident. I won't repeat it. I won't humiliate. I'll only say that when a wound shows up before the party, we've got 2 options. Cover it with tape or press it with clean cloth. I choose clean cloth. I choose the dignity of those here who cooked food, sewed clothes, drove in. And I choose my dignity, which isn't bigger than anyone else's but belongs to me." The silence then had specific weight. Not scandal silence, moral calculation silence. Someone coughed. The sound tech quietly nudged the volume down, as if he could tune the room's temperature. "Jessica," Michael said, finally naming her, the name hanging heavy in the air like a chandelier. "I'm not asking you anything here. You don't owe me a show. You owe me truth, and I owe you the same. I owe you respect now and after. I propose we step out that side door and talk for an hour, 2, as long as it takes. If the truth comes whole, whatever has to be, will be. But I can't go on as is. Not here. Not pretending, not asking applause for something that this minute isn't whole. A murmur rippled. Yvette took a half step forward, but the priest, with the touch of someone who has calmed many tempests, laid a hand on her arm, asking peace. Emily, her face now visible through the crack, had red but steady eyes. Her features held a hidden gratitude for Michael's choice. He hadn't thrown rocks. He'd opened a window. Jessica hadn't yet entered the aisle. She stood a few steps back in the bridal room, frozen between the half of herself that wanted to flee in an Uber and vanish, and the other half that desperately wanted someone to help her not turn to stone there. I'm sorry for the shock, Michael went on. I know what it takes to show up handsome on time with flowers arranged. I also know we can go eat together in a minute, hug those who need it, and especially set aside curiosity that only deepens hurt. If I say less than this, I violate my father. If I say more, I violate my mother. If I invent, I violate myself. Harold smiled inwardly. Rose pressed a napkin to her mouth. There was no anger in his voice. There was a resolute sadness. It shamed those expecting spectacle. He did, however, offer a simple piece of evidence so no one would think this caprice. Lowering the mic, speaking only to the priest and their closest parents, Michael showed his phone screen with the 2 a.m. video notification. It's not final proof, but it weighs when you stack it next to words leaking down a hallway. The priest nodded, not as a judge but as someone recognizing pain. My son, he said softly, off mic, justice and mercy don't live in separate houses. If you can host them both right now, you'll be a rare man. Michael slipped the phone back into his pocket, feeling how that device, used 1,000 times for distraction, had finally served a serious thing. I'm going out that way, he said on the mic, pointing to the side door to the sacristy, and I'd like Jessica to come with me if she wants. Emily, please, if you can, come too. And Mrs. Yvette, as her mother, you're welcome as well. The rest can wait for us if you wish, and we'll be back in an hour with a decision. I promise honesty. I just can't promise a party. The last line broke hearts with difficult elegance. There were no boos, no melodramatic gasps. One woman squeezed her husband's hand. A groomsman lowered his face. A child, not understanding, drummed the pew. Michael returned the mic to the tech, like handing back a sacred object, and walked toward the side door. The ritual had been broken and preserved at once. He'd spoken thanks and truth before vows. The ritual wouldn't be buried. It would either be resumed later or not. Passing Rose, he touched her shoulder. Mom, trust me. She nodded, lips trembling, and whispered a thread of words. God go with you. Harold put a hand on his son's shoulder, and instead of the silly line, proud of you, said a better one, come back whole. The side room had a lace-covered table and a lazy old fan turning like it was doing a favor. When Jessica entered, she brought a scent once soft and now sharp. Emily shut the door, leaned against it, and sighed the kind of sigh that saves tears for when they're truly needed. Yvette stood, arms crossed, eyeing her daughter, then Michael, like the world owed her a more obedient script. Speak, she said, the word more command than maternal. Before that, Michael raised a hand, asking for minimal formal fairness. Let me say something. I'm not a cop. I didn't come to rip out a confession. I came to gather whole what I need to know, whether I walk out of here married or a free man. Both hurt. And I'll respect whatever is said. He didn't stare at the floor like a soap opera husband. He looked at Jessica with the care of something newborn. You said a sentence out there. I don't want details that kill us. I want the understanding that saves us from the worst. Ongoing lying. I want 2 things together. Your version and your measure. Jessica took a breath, looked at Emily, and that's where her friend's agency became real. Say it, Jess. For you, not for me. If it hurts, I'll stay. If guilt spills, I'll help you carry only what's yours. What isn't yours, don't carry. The floor gained a grid, the space for guilt and the space for responsibility. Yvette rolled her eyes for a second. Cheap psychology, she thought, but kept quiet. I drank too much last night, Jessica began, and the fan seemed to speed up. I was with the girls, people from the clinic. I've been feeling like everything's too big, you know. I know you do everything you can, Michael, I swear. But I keep thinking maybe I deserve more than tightness, than counting coins. It's not that you aren't enough, it's that I'm weak. She paused. and that was the first non-material but clear proof. Responsibility, misshapen, but using the right pronoun. 2 guys hung out with us, one kissed, the other went further. I didn't give in easy, but I gave in. I woke up disgusted with myself, and when Emily asked something, that awful sentence fell out of my mouth. I didn't want you to hear, but I said it, and I can't unsay it. Saying I can't unsay it is different from it didn't happen. A thin but decisive line had been drawn. Michael braced his hands on the table. The Itakare tickets under his jacket burned. "Is there anything you need to show me?" he asked with simple seriousness. Jessica bit her lip. Emily, so as not to infantilize her, held back. "There is," Jessica said. "Messages." She unlocked her phone, opened a recent thread with Brandon Clinic, and showed without deleting. There were goofy emojis, intimate questions. A "last night was awesome, you can't disguise." A second thread with Henry, Luke's friend, had only a few lines, but enough to confirm the kiss and the beyond. The proof sat there. No contortion possible. "Thank you," Michael said, and that "thank you" confused Yvette like finding a nail in an apple. "Thanks for not making me a hunter." He breathed the warm air and, without noticing, began arranging the room like people arrange pain. "I needed you to say it whole, because if you lied, I might want to push through anyway, just to keep from breaking the hearts out there. But if you say it, I can decide without violating myself." The verb decide entered the room with the delicacy of a scalpel. Yvette couldn't hold it. "Decide what, boy? For heaven's sake, you think marriage is a candy wrapper? One slip and throw it away." Emily turned to the woman with the steadiness of someone who's learned to set limits with elders when necessary. "Mrs. Yvette, no one's throwing anything away. We're saving what's good. You more than anyone know what living for appearances is. You've told me things, remember? Don't turn this into theater for the neighbors. Let 2 adults breathe." Yvette opened and closed her mouth, irritated at having her preferred past dragged into light. Emily's agency again returned space to the couple. Michael turned to Jessica. "I love you," he said, "not as a weapon, but as a measure. That's why I can't love myself less than that right now. I can't say I do today, not with the taste of yesterday. What I can propose is this. We go out there, apologize to our people, say it won't happen now, and that we're getting help. If after a while, with a date, we can redo this whole, I'll be in. But today, I can't." Jessica cried in that quiet way that had always disarmed Michael. "I understand," she said, not trying to haggle a deadline, not promising miracles. "I ruined our ritual, I ruined our there." The word they'd scribbled on napkins returned wounded. There was, however, one piece of the ritual that could be rescued, transfigured: the mic. Michael glanced toward it in the corner, as if seeing through the wall. "I walked in there thinking of revenge," he admitted, looking to Emily. She was the one he could say this to. She'd understand without clapping. "But I couldn't. Thank God." Emily nodded, wiping a stubborn tear with the back of her hand. "What are you going to do now?" "I'm going to tell them we decided not to marry today. I'll own my part. Not seeing your pleas for help disguised as jokes about money, buying tickets without asking about the fear circling you, thinking working hard is the same as loving enough." He raised his face. There was a grave beauty in it. Emily pulled Jessica into a brief, clean hug. "You're going to face comments, Jess," she said, "and I'm here. But confrontation without the chance of change is just punishment. If you want change, say now in plain words what you'll do with yourself until you can offer something good to anyone." Jessica bit her lip again. "I'm stepping back from the clinic," she said, to her mother's surprise. "A few days, maybe weeks. I'll find a therapist. I'll talk to you, Michael, without fluff about a fear I have of becoming my mother. Strong on the outside and hollow inside." Yvette huffed. Emily didn't celebrate. She just registered it. Another proof, this time of intention. A sentence with a future tense verb and the subject aligned. "Okay," Michael said. "Let's go back out." He took the Itakare envelope. He didn't tear it. He put it back. The prepaid future wouldn't become a paper-ripping show. It would remain as a reminder of the price of making plans alone. When he opened the door, the cream ribbon on the pew still trembled, but now Michael could see it was wind, not fate. Back in the nave, the murmur settled like dust after cattle. The priest took the mic with the skill of someone who knows words can shelter without exposing. "Dear ones, life sometimes asks us for a pause. This is one of them." He handed the mic to Michael, who spoke even less. "Everyone, thank you for waiting. We decided not to hold the ceremony today. I asked that no one go looking for culprits in the hallway or truths in bathrooms. If you love us, give us space. The choice is ours. We'll take care of ourselves. And I promise every hug you have to give today will be received." Rose stood without fear of decorum and took her son in her arms, like when he burned his hand on the stove at 7. Tentative applause rose here and there, not bravado, not glee. A clapping that seemed to say, "This is hard, but it's dignified." What came next was the first small win, with a cost. The reception didn't turn into chaos. The buffet, already set, became a humble, non-party gathering. Many stayed, partly hungry, partly caring. Some slipped away quietly. Yvette, despite her frustration, did what she always knew: command. She coordinated boxing up the sweets to keep them from spoiling, called vendors for invoices with event not held due to force majeure, the right phrase to reduce losses, gathered labeled gifts into a crate with a quick inventory, promised to return them later. It was her way of loving, damage control. Emily circulated among the curious with a look that said, "Not today," while keeping a hand on Jessica, who swung between planted dignity and contained collapse. Michael went to the empty altar, no mic, and set his hands on the wood. He rested his forehead there a second, a wordless thank you. Harold later went by the print shop to tell the boss his son wouldn't be in the next day. Rose, who had promised not to cry more there, cried some under the sun outside. "It'll be okay," she repeated, not as a formula but as a groped prayer. It'll be okay, not necessarily with Jessica, but with Michael, with the part of him that chose clean cloth. The next day, real outside pressure arrived like overly efficient mail. Clipped stories, crossed messages. "Girl, I saw something, tell me. 'Cause what's up?" An anonymous profile posted a meme from Michael's leak line. Jessica's clinic fielded passive-aggressive calls. "Heads up, unfaithful bride at the front desk." Yvette, in pride and pain, threatened to sue half the planet and actually called a lawyer friend. The church owner, who also owned the hall next door, asked Michael to sign a document formalizing postponement for personal reasons, another euphemism that stores dignity in cold letters. The print shop boss, rough talker, decent heart, offered unplanned time off so Michael could step out of crosshairs. "Go breathe. We'll print more invites later, and if it helps you budget, I'll advance half your pay." The pressure that hurt most came as the 11:47 p.m. text from an unknown number. "Bro, it's Brandon. I messed up. Didn't know she was getting married today. I was drunk. Sorry." The line lit a clean, almost instructive anger in Michael's chest. Too late for apologies outsourced to alcohol. Still, he sent a single line, "Don't text me again. Make sure you don't do this to someone else," and blocked him. A boundary. At 7:05 a.m., Emily sent an audio. "Hey, I'm taking her to a therapist today. Don't abandon your part, okay? The grief for what didn't happen also needs food and fresh air. Walk with me tonight." He thanked her. Emily wasn't rescuing him. She wasn't anyone's stepping stone. She held her own limits. "I won't carry your pain to spare you from feeling it, Mike. I'll walk next to you." Period. Days stacked into a quieter calendar. Michael returned gifts with handwritten notes. "Thanks for the love we postponed, we're taking care." Some weren't returned at the donor's request. "Keep the pan, one day you'll marry. Who and when is up to you." He put the pans on the high shelf without ceremony. He went back to work. A client chose a typeface called Redemption. He chuckled inwardly at the coincidence. At night, he read 2 pages of a book on boundaries Emily had left in his mailbox with a note. "You don't have to believe, just try it." Jessica started therapy with a professional who neither praised nor condemned quickly. She cancelled that weekend's party with her friends. She slept at her mother's for a while, like returning temporarily to an old roof to stitch it. By the end of week 2, Michael saved Jessica's therapist's contact in his phone. Not to control anything, but to be clear with himself, this wasn't theater. He booked his own session at a clinic nearby with a psychologist who took lunch hour slots. "I don't want to turn into a man who only trusts himself," he said in the first session. "Men like that turn to stone. I want to stay soft, but with edges." The psychologist smiled at the image and asked him to write down the insistent ritual that would have opened the wedding and now needed a new form. "Thank, promise, honor. You can do that without a veil," she said. "You can do it on a park bench. The ritual is yours. If you want, one day you can take it back to a church." The advice hummed in his head alongside the cutter's clack. He started a small habit. Every morning before powering the machines, he texted someone he loved, Mom, Dad, Emily, a friend, with a concrete gratitude. It was almost silly, but it worked like a footing. "Dad, thanks for teaching me to use rope without tearing my hand. Mom, thanks for not letting me leave home without eating. Emily, thanks for looking me in the eyes yesterday and calling me out when I was dodging." The gratitude ritual came back, transformed. No mic, no flowers, the same old truth. Slowly, the opening moral question withdrew, not because it lost meaning, but because he answered it in practice. When the truth hurts, sometimes it needs telling to the right public, not to indiscriminate audiences. On the 13th day, just when the dust seemed to have learned to lie low, came the most unexpected setback. The print shop received a formal email from one of the cancelled wedding's flower vendors, charging a penalty for lost opportunity. The contract Jessica had hurriedly signed had tough clauses. The amount equaled 2 months' rent. Michael squinted at the PDF, toggling between feeling yanked back into the church and the temptation to say, "Then you pay," to a past he didn't want to bankroll. He forwarded it to Jessica with, "We need to talk about this." Her quick reply surprised him. "I signed this without consulting you, I'll pay." It was her first sentence rearranging pieces. Pay with what? The clinic had cut her shifts to manage optics, a polite punishment. Yvette, always quick with checks when the window display called, hesitated. "I won't bankroll your irresponsibility," she said, unaware of life's irony flinging back at her. 2 tracks were clear. Let Jessica handle it alone, fair-seeming and cruel, or split the weight without sharing a home, generous-seeming and messy. At lunch therapy, Michael brought the coin-shaped doubt. If I help, I'm tied to a bond that's no longer there. If I don't, I'm the guy who points and walks away. The therapist didn't offer prefab lines. She asked him to name the value he wanted to protect. "Respect," he said, only noticing the obvious once spoken. "Respect for me and for her. Respect for my parents, who knocked on the neighbor's door with me when I broke a window. Respect for Emily, who must wake up tired of being the adult every hour. Then choose in a way that respects the edges," she said. "Edges aren't walls. They're fences with a gate." That night, Michael wrote Jessica an email in 3 clear paragraphs. First, he recognized her initiative to own the debt. Second, he offered a deal. He'd pay half the penalty now, with a formal, written commitment that she'd cover the other half in installments, reimbursing him monthly without interest and without side chatter. Third, he explained why. This isn't punishment. It's architecture. We built this loss together, each with our part, at different times. I prepaid with dreams. You paid late with bad choices. We split it. That way neither of us leaves thinking love solves math. He attached a simple 1-page agreement, signable at a bakery counter. Jessica replied in 30 minutes. "I'll sign tomorrow. Thank you for not infantilizing me." The agreement was printed, oh the irony, at the shop and signed with a promotional pen. The next fall wasn't on letterhead. On a Friday, almost 2 weeks later, Brandon, the late-night texter, showed up at the shop. A regular guy in a worn polo, downcast eyes, too much gel holding onto a style no one wore anymore. "Sorry to show up," he began, humble enough to be convincing. "I wanted to look you in the eye and say I'm ashamed. I'm separated, in a hole. I drank. I was stupid. I don't want to take anything from you. I just came to put my face where the screen was." Michael's first impulse, tell him to leave, almost gave way to the rough pleasure of a private humiliation. Instead, he set both hands on the counter, breathed and said, "You can't take anything from me because what's truly mine you can't touch. I appreciate the courage to come. Now, out of respect for both of us, we don't talk again. You handle your hole. I'll handle mine." Brandon tried to linger. Michael cut him off with a nod. It was a hard moral choice. Ego wanted a trophy. Character chose a boundary. The hardest choice, though, wasn't about Brandon or bills. It was time. Emily, always with agency and without rooting for either side, asked Michael on the sidewalk, post-walk, to name a deadline. Indefinition is an emotional dump. Everything that's rotten ends up there. You two need to decide whether you're on pause or done. A pause with a deadline differs from an ending that won't say its name. He took 2 days to answer. Then he asked Jessica for coffee at the same counter where she'd asked for that quote months earlier. They didn't sit on the same side. They chose opposite chairs like physical space could teach the heart something. "I have a proposal that's not a test or a punishment," he said, fingers interlaced. "It's a project. If you're in, we call it a pause, with a deadline and tasks. If you're not, we call it an ending, with respect and a name, and move on." Jessica nodded, waiting without trying to guess. 3 months. During that time, we don't kiss, don't sleep together, don't touch each other's socials, don't give play-by-plays. We talk for an hour a week, with topics. Money, routine, desire, fear. You keep therapy. I keep mine. At the end of 3 months, we sit down with your therapist together and decide. If it's yes, it's a new yes. If it's no, it's a whole no. No half measures. Jessica stared at her cappuccino foam for a long time. When she looked up, hers were the eyes of someone who'd seen a map and finally grasped the scale. "I'm in," she said. "I'm tired of not naming." And because she could offer something herself too, she added, "I ask you not to rescue me when I stumble in that period. If I'm late on a payment, invoice me. If I text you at 2 a.m. wanting comfort, tell me see you Tuesday. I need to learn." Michael agreed, not as a parent, but as a peer. The weeks smelled like asphalt after rain. Michael discovered the odd relief of Sundays with no explanation owed. Jessica discovered the productive terror of Mondays without applause. Emily revisited limits. "I'm your friend, Jess, not your therapist. Tell me how you are, but I won't empty your buckets. What I can hand you is clean water." Yvette, faced with her daughter's pullback, tried one last offensive. "Girl, life's for those who do. What, you going saint on me now?" Jessica answered with a new calm. "I'm going adult." The woman laughed with disdain, but alone in the kitchen, a familiar knot rose in her throat. The same one 20 years earlier, when she'd accepted an affair to avoid facing a husband who came home wearing someone else's cologne. Consequences didn't knock on other people's windows. They sat on her skin. At the end of month 2, the shop landed a big order for simple invitations for a technical school graduation. Michael scheduled deadlines, drew a clean typeface, listened to parents with stories of night classes and heavy day work. Seeing that quiet joy of people getting their names on a formal card, he realized his job wasn't just cutting and printing, it was lending shape to rituals. He remembered the therapist. The ritual is yours. He began to imagine, without hurry, the day he'd carry a mic again, not to expose wounds, but to inaugurate a promise. Maybe at his parents' anniversary, maybe on a porch, maybe under Itakari palms someday, with someone else or with no one but him and the wind. On the last Saturday of the 3rd month, Emily texted them both. "Tomorrow, 4 p.m, Parish Hall. We need to close a cycle, public enough to end the gossip, intimate enough to fit the right people. Bring words, not defenses." An unexpected invitation to a non-party, affair ending in an audible voice. Michael and Jessica said yes. Rose baked a cornmeal cake. Harold grabbed his guitar without promising a song. Yvette considered not going, but control is a vice that dresses as love. She would. The parish hall had rows of plastic tables, the smell of fresh coffee, and filters hanging like little paper bells. Some 30 familiar faces and a few curious ones spaced themselves with care, the kind of care people use when they fear seeing their own name jump into the story. On the wall, a poster read "Coat Drive," and for a second Michael thought how people also gather coats for other folks' souls when winter crashes in uninvited. Emily took the mic, not because she likes it, but because someone had to hold the narrative's thread. "Thanks for coming. I asked for this space because small towns are good for almost everything except letting things die with dignity. We're here not to accuse or air laundry. We're here to end a story at the right volume, with the right people, and release the rest of the world from inventing chapters." The way she spoke didn't demand agreement. It asked everyone to put away their plates and spoons. "I'll pass the mic to the two of them. Michael first, then Jessica. And if anyone tries to turn a question into a sickle, I'll close the harvest myself." Laughter planed the floor. Michael stepped to the center, hands empty. No papers, just a decision not to perform. "Folks," he said, "today I don't have metaphors and I don't want them. I want to talk about 3 things: respect, boundaries, and gratitude. Respect for you, for showing up that day with pressed clothes and good expectations. Boundaries for what belongs here. I won't repeat what doesn't matter, and I won't accept what harms. Gratitude for those who didn't ask me anything. Your silence was a blanket," he breathed. "Jessica and I decided to end our marriage story today. The time we gave ourselves did what it promised. It listened to fears, aligned accounts, found the flaw. This isn't an announcement that gives me joy, but it gives me peace. I leave whole, with a scar, yes, and with my gratitude ritual still standing." He looked at his parents and added, "And with the certainty you don't need an altar to say thank you and I'm sorry is learned early, but used for life." A collective sigh reset the room's temperature. Rose cried without shame. Harold patted his son's shoulder with his own rough, sweet way. Anne drew a clean line on the floor. Some looked disappointed there wasn't more blood. Others visibly relieved no one was made a soap opera villain in front of neighbors. Emily nodded like checking a knot. Jessica took the mic. Her fingers shook less than on church day. "I'm not asking for understanding," she began, Because understanding is a gift, and I don't have a right to it. I'm going to ask for space, which is something we dig with our own hands. I made a mistake that hurt the person I loved. What I can offer now isn't a defense, it's a commitment. I'll keep working on myself. I'll keep repaying the debt. I've paid 2 installments, there are 10 left. I'll keep trying not to turn whoever walks with me into the ground I forget. She breathed and glanced for a second at her mother. And I want to say something I learned that isn't a subtweet to anyone. When you grow up learning that the image protects you, shame becomes home. I'm moving out of that home slowly. Yvette's mouth set hard, but she stayed quiet. Consequences perched like birds on the sill, not singing loud but present. A teacher from their high school asked for the mic gently. I just want to say, she said, I'm proud to see young people doing the hard thing without a carnival. And that love that's worth it isn't the love that never errs, it's the love that doesn't lie. She handed back the mic. A man in the corner cleared his throat, eager to turn this into a culture war. Emily blasted him with a look. Not today. There remained one last concrete piece, the promise that every truth would be accompanied by some object, message, gesture, document, or witness. Michael raised a clear folder and took out 2 sheets. 1, the signed installment agreement. 2, a flower vendor receipt stamped installment 212 paid. It wasn't show and tell. It was an antidote to speculation. For folks who love rumor, documents are boring, he said with a brief smile, putting them away. The gesture unplugged a few tongues before they could start. Someone, needing to ease the air, asked Harold to play something. He said he didn't have the voice, but he'd strum 2 notes like someone blessing the deck before a storm. The sound softened the room. Rose poured coffee, served cake. Conversations spread in islands. At the door, Brandon, invited by no one, peered in but backed out after seeing how the narrative was organized from the inside. Direct costs, 0. Invisible costs, saved, countless. When the mic returned to the table, Emily closed it out. Thanks for coming, and for leaving gently. We're leaving with an agreement. No one will continue this story in grocery lines. If someone tries to badmouth it, offer coffee and change the subject. And if you can't, I recommend reading a medicine label out loud. It works. Laughter spilled some light. There were hugs like slabs and hugs like tents. Jessica approached Rose with wet eyes and asked forgiveness in a low voice. Rose hugged her with that mix of love and limit interior mothers know. You'll be okay if you keep doing what's right when nobody claps. Yvette walked up to Michael, inhaled like swallowing a twig, and said, I wanted to see you small, I admit. Then I'd feel big. I didn't. I'm sorry. He neither absolved nor punished her. You're a mother, he said. When you can, use that to protect the truth, not the window display. She nodded, not yet sure what to do with the line, pocketing it like a seed. Outside, the coat drive poster flapped in the wind. Michael thought the whole town seemed underclothed for honest conversations, and that sometimes the best coat is a handful of sentences said at the right volume, to the right people, at the right time. The hall emptied. The echo didn't hurt. 3 months later, Summer leaned on the gate, smelling of ripe mango. Life had settled into a snap-free routine. Work, walks, simple dinners, Wednesday therapy. Jessica moved to a smaller, quieter apartment and took a reduced shift at the clinic. No snide jokes, no bar shadows. She kept paying the installments, sending receipts with 2 sober emojis, a handshake and a little calendar page. Emily, who never agreed to become the audience for pain, stayed a friend without mixing roles. Sometimes dinner with Michael to talk music, sometimes sleeping on Jessica's couch through a rough night. True co-protagonists don't save others' stories. They brace the war so others can pass. On a wide sun Tuesday, Rose and Harold hit 32 years married. Michael decided, no veil, no permission, to reenact his favorite ritual, now transformed. He rented the garden at that same parish for 2 hours and organized with friends a simple coffee, thermoses, cornbread, chairs pushed into the shade of a yellow ipe tree. In his pocket, a handwritten note. He didn't invite many people. He invited the right ones, the kind who fit inside a circle without sharp edges. Jessica wasn't invited, out of respect for them and her, not exclusion, precision. Yvette found out and surprised herself by sending a text. Congratulations to your parents. Sometimes the world learns. When the clock marked mid-afternoon, Michael asked to speak. This time his voice didn't find echo, it found wind. Mom, Dad, he began, the IPE's shade tracing patterns over their faces. I wanted to say this into a mic with flowers and a white dress that day. I didn't. I'm saying it now. Thank you for teaching me that decoration is nice, but bread sustains. Thank you for giving me the kind of love that holds when we need to say not now. Thank you for letting me choose clean cloth." Rose laughed through tears. Harold looked at the ground like searching for a lost screw, then faced his son with clear water eyes. Michael breathed and completed the transformed ritual. "I promise to honor you in whatever I build, alone, with someone, or surrounded by friends. And I promise to carry truth like you carry a child, unrushed, carefully, and only with shame when truth is missing." He pocketed the note and pulled out the beige envelope to Itakare, now creased and dated. For a moment, the past's fingertip touched the present. "This paper burned a hole in my pocket for months. I thought about tearing it up. I thought about framing it as a trophy of pain. I did neither. Today, I want to give it a better fate." He walked to his mother and pressed the envelope into his parents' hands. "Hugo, a hammock between two palm trees suits people who taught me to wait for rain without losing humor. I'll go later, another day, with a different kind of ticket." Rose shook her head, the most beautiful gesture of a woman who learned to say yes to life without saying no to herself. "Son," she said, "we'll go if we can pack your courage in our suitcase." Harold cracked a rare smile and said what he never says, "I accept." After coffee, Emily lingered. They sat on the garden wall, twirling the day around their fingers. "You good?" she asked, not by script, but from real curiosity. "Yeah," he said, and the word finally wasn't a defense. "Not fireworks happy, hammock happy." Emily smiled. "Hammocks are better. Fireworks scare the birds." They talked work, a little music, almost nothing about the past. Before leaving, she put a small envelope in his hands. "A silly gift," she said, "for your insistent ritual." He opened it, a toy microphone, tiny keychain size. They laughed. "So you remember not every speech needs a stage," she finished. He clipped it to his shop keys. On the way back, Michael passed the hall where the coat drive poster had been. In its place, another, "June Festival. Bring your mug." He thought life is like that. We collect coats when nights get too cold, and when it warms up, we invent parties to remember heat needs sharing too. He remembered the beginning, the tie's knot, the stained mirror, the trembling cream ribbon, and understood in calm clarity that courage isn't shouting what they did to us, it's saying what we'll do with what they did. He had chosen clean cloth, and clean cloth, well washed, becomes a tablecloth. The next week, a client ordered simple invitations for a wedding in the town square. She wanted uncoated paper, no frills type, and a quiet line in the corner, "Bring your truth." Michael set the layout with a steady hand. When he presented the proof, the bride asked him to read the final line aloud. He read it without a stumble, giving back to the world a sentence he now knew from the inside. That night, he sent Jessica confirmation of the last installment received. "Thank you." Nothing else, no silent messages. She replied, "Thank you," and then silence. Good silences are construction too. A month later, one ordinary evening, Michael sat on the shop's curb with a cheese bread and a bottle of water. The sky, in its billboard calling, stretched a strip of pink and orange. He pulled out his phone and sent 3 belated morning ritual gratitudes. "Dad, thanks for lending me a steady hand when mine failed. Mom, thanks for teaching me to laugh at small disasters. Emily, thanks for reminding me the names of things." He pocketed the phone, leaned his head against the wall and closed his eyes. No music, no mic, just an ordinary man, held by an architecture of words and choices that don't dazzle in the shop window, but year after year, keep the house from rotting.